Hey there. Quick question. How many of you would like to have less stress in your life? Let's see. One, two, three. A lot of you. Well, stick with me because we're going to talk about the biology of stress. This is Carolyn Pitts with Intendwell. Thank you for joining me. I want to talk with you about the biology of stress. Let's explore what's going on chemically in our bodies when we experience a stress response. Knowledge is power. And I believe that understanding how your body is responding when you're triggered will make your use of relaxation techniques even more effective. Our story begins with a basic description of the autonomic nervous system, or ANS. The default mode is parasympathetic, commonly referred to as rest, digest, and heal. This is the mode that we should be in a majority of the time. When the brain perceives a threat, a flood of chemical responses occur automatically and instantly. And the sympathetic mode, also known as fight, flight, or freeze, switches on. As soon as the threatening situation is resolved, the ANS is supposed to revert to parasympathetic function. Imagine an antelope grazing on the savanna. Its ANS is in parasympathetic mode. Suddenly, a lion jumps out of the tall grass and starts chasing it. The antelope's ANS switches to sympathetic mode and it takes off running. Assuming that it outruns the lion, it will resume grazing. The activity of running away from the lion helps to purge those fight, flight, or freeze chemicals from the antelope's bloodstream, so its ANS easily reverts to rest, digest, and heal mode. Nature designed the ANS this way to keep us alive. It spurs us to action in an emergency. Even though we rarely have to outrun a predator these days, the sympathetic mode gets us out of bed in the morning, speeds us along when a deadline looms, and supports athletic performance. A quick disclaimer, this is a simplification of a very complex process. Let's dive into the biology of each mode. In the default parasympathetic mode, we can see that the body is focused on rest, digest, and heal. The blood chemistry is regulated as needed for sleep, digestion, repair. Most importantly, our energy is focused on digestion, cellular growth and repair, and immune system function. And what's going on with our brain? Well, we're using our prefrontal cortex, our forebrain, for thinking and decision making. We're in executive mode, and our brain is open to receive new information and learning. As you look at this list, imagine how it would feel if all of these activities stopped functioning optimally, because that's what happens when our brain perceives a threat to our safety. In sympathetic mode, the body is all about survival. Our blood chemistry changes so that we can produce energy more quickly to either fight the threat or run away. We become so focused on the perceived threat that we may not be able to see or hear other things in our environment. All of our energy is going to our arms and our legs. And this means that things like our immune system and our digestive system are suppressed. If we go back to the example of the antelope being chased by a lion, there really is no point in the antelope's body exerting any energy to digest the grass that it was just eating if the lion catches it. So it puts all of that energy into the legs and running away from the lion. And what's going on in our brains? Well, the brain relies on instinct and emotions. It reverts to using the limbic system in the hindbrain because reflexes respond faster than executive functions. And we've all experienced knee-jerk reactions when we respond to something without thinking it through first. Some of the key takeaways are circled here in red. Notice the chemicals that are in your bloodstream: glucose, insulin, cholesterol. We hear about those a lot. All right, this next part is really important. Your brain will activate the sympathetic mode of the ANS even if there is no immediate threat to your physical safety. You can be sitting on your sofa all safe and snug in your home, and something comes on the TV, maybe a scary moment in a movie you're watching, or a sensational news story, and wham, you are triggered. Remember how the antelope purged the fight, flight, or freeze chemicals by running away from the lion? Now, you're probably not going to get up and run around the sofa. So those chemicals are going to continue to circulate in your bloodstream for a while, meaning that your digestion, your immune system, your prefrontal cortex, yada, 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 aren't fully online. And those chemicals might still be circulating in your bloodstream when you start thinking and you recall an upsetting situation. Perhaps something that happened earlier in the day, perhaps something that happened last week or even last year. And wham, you are triggered again. And then you think about something in the future. Something coming up next week. Maybe a tough meeting at work or a big bill coming due. And wham, you're triggered all over again. Now you are stewing in a bloodbath of adrenaline. Your digestion, your immune system, your prefrontal cortex, yada, 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 are barely functioning. And good luck getting a decent night's sleep. So, while nature designed the fight, flight, or freeze mode for survival, we aren't supposed to spend much time there. But unfortunately, our brain's inability to discern actual versus perceived threats means that we spend more time there than is healthy for us. Now let's look at some of the possible health effects of spending most of our time in fight, flight, or freeze mode. Everybody is different, so the symptoms will vary by individual. Now I'm not going to read these slides aloud to you, so you may want to pause the video, but I've highlighted some key concepts. Consider whether any of these conditions may apply to you. Okay, before we close, here are some key takeaways. The sympathetic mode of the ANS is tied to our survival mechanism. It's a good thing. The challenge is when it stays activated longer than appropriate. But we can learn to manage our ANS modes with practice. It starts with intentional awareness. Become aware of what it feels like when you are triggered. For me, just the other day, I was rushing to get to an appointment, and I realized I'm breathing shallowly. My heart is beating faster than usual. And so I used my go-to technique, which is diaphragmatic breathing. I did it while I was driving, and it restored a sense of calm. Intentional breathing is so important, and you really need to practice the breathing techniques ahead of time. When we are triggered is not the time to learn a breathing technique. I especially love diaphragmatic breathing. I will post a video on that soon. And if you subscribe to my newsletter, There was a video on diaphragmatic breathing in the January 13 issue. Intentional thinking. Be selective in where you place your focus. Our lives are a combination of things that are going well and things that are not going so well. Our survival instinct can prompt us to focus on what is not going well because it may pose a threat. But with intentional effort, we can learn to shift our focus to what is going well in our lives. Limit or avoid TV shows, movies, programs, or people that trigger you. Understanding how to manage perceptions, well, that's a topic for another video. Intentional movement. Being active helps to purge those stress chemicals from our body. And you don't need to get all sweaty at the gym. Take a relaxing stroll or put on some music and dance like no one is watching. If you signed up for my newsletter, you received a free copy of my Quick to Calm guide, which includes a technique called vagus nerve reset, which uses eye movements to counteract the freeze response. And finally, subscribe to my newsletter to learn techniques that you can use to build your resilience. Well, I hope you found that as interesting as I do. I think our bodies are fascinating, and I really enjoy learning how they work. And like I said at the beginning, understanding what's going on in your body chemically when you experience a stress response, I think makes us more effective when we use relaxation techniques to counter that response in the body. If you're still with me, thank you so much for sticking in. I know this video was a little bit longer than my typical videos, and for some of you, maybe not quite so entertaining, but thank you for sticking with me. And if you have any questions at all, please leave me a comment. Send me an email at intendwellllc@gmail.com. I'd love to dialogue with you about it. Thanks so much. Have a beautiful week. And remember, the best things in life are intentional.